Hi, my name is Yetunde, and I'll be talking about higher education and identity development of Nigerian females. First, let's look at the proposal for the study. Now, I'll be starting my presentation with Malala Yousafzai's quote that all I want is education and I am afraid of no one. Now, the reason for this quote is because of the nature of my topic and the various lived experiences shared by the participants. Most of the participants are resolute to focus on education, and they also talked about how their resoluteness has helped them to build their identity. And this made this quote important for my presentation. During this presentation, I would like to cover the purpose of the study, the research question, theoretical framework, methodology, participants, findings and discussions, which are based on the themes, the implications, and conclusion. Let's start by looking at the purpose of this study. Do you know that as much as the Nigerian government talks about equal access to education in its national policy on education, the sociocultural patriarchy in the country does not make this a reality. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to explore the various challenges that beset Nigerian women in the patriarchal society, how they use higher education to overcome these barriers, and build their identities. For this study, there are 3 research questions. First, what challenges do Nigerian females face in the Nigerian education system? Second, what stories do female Nigerians share about any special steps they have taken to empower themselves? And third, what do female Nigerians see as the role of education in their identity development? To answer my research questions, I used 2 theories, Ogbu's cultural ecology theory and Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. The importance of environment in the child's upbringing, as discussed in Ogbu's cultural ecology, as it's based on cultural competence and instrumental competencies, why I used this theory, and also the conflict resolution at each stages of development made me use the Erikson's theory for this study. Apart from these 2 theories, I also considered Bandura's self-efficacy theory and Maslow's motivation theory in passing when analyzing my data. For the methodology, I used the hermeneutic phenomenology study, and under that I talked about the phenomenological reduction, epoche, and the researcher's bias. Since phenomenology dealt with the lived experiences of participants, the hermeneutic here talks about describing and interpreting the reason that people's lived experiences occur. And we do this interpretation by recognizing and interpreting such lived experiences by people. As a phenomenological study, hermeneutics deals with the understanding of others through conversation. And this is what I did by having an interview with the 19 participants used for this study. Now let's look at epoche. Epoche is the researcher's bias, and here it is the suspension of judgment. Achieving my suspension of judgment, I used phenomenological reduction, which is suspension of assumption in my study. So even though I have experienced part of the lived experiences of the participants, I was objective enough not to impose my judgment on the participants. And looking at the diagram, I, as a researcher, I have interaction with the subject and also with aspect of the world, that is the phenomenon we are talking about. So what I did, like with the object of study, I tried to stand aloof and not to allow my judgment to be imposed on them or to influence the responses of the participants, so as to have an open view of their lived experiences as it will help in my analysis and the conclusion of my study. In terms of participant selection, I used purposeful sampling strategy. And for the purposeful sampling strategy, the reason using this is I used all females because they are all the ones that experience the phenomenon under discussion. They are research participants, so because they understand the various challenges that beset Nigerian women, how they strive to get a higher education and build their self-esteem. That is why my sampling strategy is purposeful. Then for convenience sampling, this is concerned with the collection of data from participants who are conveniently available to participate in the study. So for my study, because of the fact that, because of the pandemic, I couldn't go and see some of them in person. So the convenience sampling was adopted to use those that were readily available to have the interview remotely. So we used Zoom to have the interview. And that is why it's convenient sampling that I also used in line with my purposeful sampling strategy. So for my participant demographics, they're all, in terms of gender, they're all females, and specifically Nigerian females who have had their educational qualifications in Nigeria. All of them, their BSc is in Nigeria. And like I said, there are 19 participants. So looking at their educational qualification, there's only one person that is SSC holder. SSC holder is like high school. So the rest are HND, BSc, MSc, and some are PhD in view. So HND is higher national diploma, ND is national diploma, SSC is senior secondary certificate examination, BSc is at first degree, MSc and PhD. So all the participants except one of them, they have all these qualifications. Then their location they're in Nigeria, some in United States and some in United Kingdom, that is Scotland. But like I said, all of them, they have had their formative years in Nigeria before traveling abroad. They've all had their first degree in Nigeria. And that says that they've been able, they've experienced the phenomenon, the challenges that Nigerian women face before traveling abroad. Then the ethnicity in Nigeria, we have 3 major ethnic groups: the Yorubas, the Hausas, and the Igbos. But for this study, I had access to mostly Yorubas and Igbos. And in terms of the experience of the Hausas, some participants were able to share their experience based on their interaction and lived experiences in the North, or having friends who are Hausas. Then the age, they are mostly millennials and Gen Z, and that helps in the smooth transitioning and the experiences of the participants to be similar. So for the interview themes, there were 5 major themes. We have the home environment and upbringing, the Nigerian education and its impact on female empowerment, have overcoming the educational challenges for career inspiration, education, empowering female identity, and we have the overarching theme around culture and gender stigma. So the sub-theme that was coded or arrived from the home environment and upbringing are the parents' education and parenting style, gender treatment at home, exposure to opportunities, and socioeconomic status. So most of the participants talked about how their parents' education influenced them in overcoming the sociocultural challenges that beset Nigerian females. They talked about how their parents were supportive enough of them and how they provide a suitable environment for them. Then in terms of gender treatment, they talked about how the male were given freedom, they were allowed to go out to interact with others, like you can see in this picture. The boys are celebrated and the boy is able to go out. But look at the female. She's just hiding there like, oh, there's really no freedom. And some of them also talked about how they are made to do all the chores and that they allow the male to just sit and watch TV or not to do anything at home. Then the Nigerian education and impact on female empowerment. The sub-themes are the educational qualification and impact on female empowerment, the educational challenges they went through, and the motivations for attaining higher education. For the educational qualification, they talked about how it helped them to be financially sustainable and how it made them to be independent. Then the educational challenges, they talked about how they were harassed by professors, sexually harassed by professors, and also talked about how they were not even allowed to do some courses because of their gender. A participant talked about how she was told to like, oh, this is particular course you should do. You should just do education because you are a female. You don't need to do accounting or you don't need to do medicine. Then apart from that, they shared their motivations, which include economic stability and sustainability for future self-actualization, career progression. So because of their educational attainment, I had to use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And based on the analysis, all the participants are on the self-actualization stage of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, whereby they are all creative in their various endeavors, and that also they are spontaneous in making decisions, and they alluded their spontaneity to their educational attainment. They also talked about how they're able to have, that they are very decisive, and they're able to have this sense of judgment from right from wrong, and they're able to develop their inner potentials, and they alluded meanings to whatever they want in life. Then overcoming educational challenges for career inspiration. They talked about the sociocultural challenges, how they were able to overcome it is by being focused, being resilient, and like avoiding all form of discouragement from people. Then they talked about their professional life and fulfillment. Like most of them alluded their fulfillment to their education and that they hope to achieve more. And one participant talked about how she hoped to encourage other females to have education and to be resilient and to be focused. Then education is an empowering tool for female identity, as they all talked about how education has helped them to strengthen their human agency and also to form their identity. In forming their identity, most of the participants are identity achievers because they've been able to experience the two different sides, like how the culture limited them and how education has liberated them. So in terms of their identity, they are identity achievers. Then the overarching themes has to do with the cultural heterogeneity and homogeneity, how they were forced to submit to cultural expectations, cultural values and versus family values, and how they conflict. For instance, the cultural heterogeneity, yes, we say Nigerian is a diverse country with many cultures, but the way all the cultures treat female is the same thing. A participant talked about, like, yes, as a female, she is a Yoruba lady, that yes, if you have a male child, and if you have females and you don't have a male, it is believed that you don't have any child. And if you have just one male child, they call the child Okonla, and that is a child that supersedes all. And that is what is applicable among the Igbos too. So all the cultures, even when we're talking about heterogeneity, they are homogeneous, like they are sameness in the way they attach importance to having male child at the detriment of female child. Then my conclusion is that sociocultural factors pose a lot of threats, like harassment, violence, lack of support, financial constraints that affect Nigerian females, and this hindered females from getting to the peak of their careers. Environment and upbringing is crucial to an individual's identity development. And third, educational attainment helps to prevent stagnation and despair as adults. Third, gender disparity should be avoided in all ramifications, and education needs more government subsidy, especially for the indigenous female students. Then this research is important because education is an eye-opener for females. It helps to support females, and gender equality and eradication of sexism should be avoided in the society. These are my references. And question. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your questions.